Okay, well, welcome everyone to the first ever pedagogy forum at CSUSB. So that's kind of exciting. And you're in the breakout that is called Innovations in Community Engaged Learning, Pathways for Student Success, presented today by Dr. Diane Podolsky and Juan Ochoa from the Office of Community Engagement. Dr. Podolsky is the director of the Office of Community Engagement and has served CSUSB and the communities in the Inland Empire for coming up on 20 years.
Wow.
Shut up. I mean,
It's, yeah, I know.
Extremely impressive, impressive, the things that you have done in your time here at CSUSB. I mean, I thought the introduction would be too long if I went and enumerated all of those many projects that you have spearheaded. But I will share with you that she has a bachelor's degree and she graduated summa cum laude, by the way, in psychology from Southwest Minnesota State University. And both her master's degree in counseling psychology and doctorate in educational counseling are from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln.
That's right.
So Juan Ochoa is the administrative coordinator for faculty initiatives in the Office of Community Engagement. And this is the first time I'm meeting Juan, so it is my pleasure to also meet you and introduce you at the same time. He serves as the first point of contact for faculty who are engaged in community partnership development, service learning, and/or community-based participatory research. Juan is an alumni from CSUSB. He got his bachelor's degree in business administration and now is continuing here at CSUSB, pursuing his Master of Public Administration. So the combined experience and the contributions that both Juan and Diane have made to, service learning and communities and all of the many, many things that they do. It's an inspiration to me. So I'm extremely excited to participate in this roundtable discussion and learn stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane and Juan.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Generous as always, of course. And Juan, I think you're going to change our screen and we have a brief PowerPoint.
Yes, let me go ahead and do so.
Are you allowed to?
I do not have sharing, so Diane.
Okay, I will do many things. Can you now?
Let me try.
Okay.
Okay, let me check. Yes, yeah. Should be able. Okay, let me just go on presentation mode. And the title of our presentation is called Innovation in Community Engaged Learning, Pathways to Student Success. And then I will have Diane, if you want to quickly introduce yourself for people who just joined us.
Well, absolutely. So some of you are just coming on. I'm Diane Podolsky. I'm the director of the Office of Community Engagement, and I am joined by.
And I am Juan Ochoa, the Faculty Initiatives Coordinator here at the Office of Community Engagement. And then I will be the one who provides a presentation overview. This presentation will talk about the CSU's new Community Engaged Learning and Service Learning designation. We will also share best practices for syllabus construction, innovative project ideas, and reflection prompts. In addition, there will be an overview of Stanford's Pathways of Public Service and Civic Engagement Framework and Survey. And this framework allows for students to identify different approaches to contribute to the public good. I hope that everyone can stay to the end of the presentation because we will be having a giveaway to one lucky faculty member. And then we will also have a Google Drive folder with syllabus, course, and project ideas and reflection prompts that are mentioned throughout the presentation. Now I will pass it over to Diane and she will talk about the new CSU course designations.
All right, oops.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay, so the CSU is becoming more sophisticated in its view of community engagement. And they're realizing that there are actually multiple ways that our universities engage in the community. So they want to do a new designation of these courses to make sure that we have a more fine-grained understanding of the education that our community partners are helping us to provide for our students. The first designation is one that should seem very familiar to all of you. It is community service learning. This is service learning that's included as, or service that's included as part of a course that has an intentionality behind it. There is a reflection component, and there is an expectation that there will be both a benefit to the community partner and to the students in the course. And you can see in the graphic design there that it's sort of the coming together of academic material, the service experience, and then the reflection activity. The new designation that they want to add is curricular community engaged learning. This would be anything that happens as part of a course that happens in the community, but it may tend to be more of a internship or a practica where really the student may be receiving more benefit than the community partner in this situation. One thing you may want to think about is if I'm in a classroom and I'm only observing, the classroom perhaps doesn't receive, or the students or the teacher doesn't perhaps receive much from me, but I'm, as a student, am receiving more from that experience. I'm still in the community, but the learning is more coming toward me as a student and less of a reciprocal relationship with a community partner. And so that's the new designation that the Chancellor's Office is promoting. It may be very appropriate in your course to have curricular community engaged learning. There's nothing wrong with that. That may be where the level of the students are at, especially in an introductory course. Students may not have as much knowledge or experience to share with the community partner, and they may be just there to observe and learn. Whereas in more of a community service learning experience, there's the expectation that the student will be applying the theory and knowledge that they've gained in the classroom in a community context. So two different types of engagement. Both of them are high impact practices. Both have been found to be effective to retain students, to increase their interest in a discipline, and also in a career in this field. But they have two different outcomes, and perhaps if you want to think about it as more of an introductory and advanced experience, or a beginner as an on-ramp to something that may be a little more impactful, that may be how you might want to think about these two designations. We're going to be engaging in an effort to help to designate our courses, probably starting in spring of next year. And from then on, the courses will be marked this way in PeopleSoft, and we'll be able to pull reports in that way. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll talk about Pathways as an innovative approach to community engaged learning. Pathways of Public Service and Civic Engagement is a framework that details a range of approaches to contribute to the public good. You know, here at CSUSB, we have a long-standing culture of engaging with our communities. We have campus-wide traditions like Coyote Cares Day, service learning in classes, and we offer countless opportunities for CSUSB students, staff, and faculty to volunteer in our communities. And throughout all these different opportunities, there are multiple approaches to contribute. But oftentimes we tend to stick with the type of service that we already know. And this is how Pathways hopes to help. The Pathways framework gives students the tools necessary to explore different ways to make positive impacts in their community, and also discover about how they prefer to contribute to social change and the common good. These pathways can be used by anyone, regardless of their major, their profession, or their background. And these pathways are also issue neutral, so students can use them regardless of their views or perspectives. Students can learn about these pathways by taking a 10 to 15 minute survey. And in this time, they're asked about what kind of service they would like to try and what kind of service they are already engaged in. And after that, students receive information about the different pathways and examples of service through each different pathway. At the end of the survey, the student will receive a personalized report about their preferred approaches to contribute to the public good. We are sharing this pathways framework because faculty all across the states have been using this to build community project-based courses, case study assignments, service learning, and community engaged learning courses. And when building these community engaged activities, faculty tend to use them in one of two ways. The first is that they let students tackle an issue through a specific pathway, or they assign an issue and then the student considers how the issue can be addressed throughout these 6 different pathways. And of course, these are just a few examples of the uses of this framework. And in the next video, I will be, in the next slide, I'll be sharing a video of how each pathways interacts with each other, and it would also provide a description of each pathway card that you see on the screen. So hopefully this gets you thinking about how you can incorporate this in one of your classes. Let me go ahead and press on the video. I'm going to share my audio so it sounds good. So Diane, can I get a thumbs up if you can hear it?
Welcome to the Pathways of Public Service and Civic Engagement.
These 6 pathways describe ways to contribute to the common good.
Community-engaged learning and research connects academics to community concerns.
Community organizing and activism involves, educates, and mobilizes individual and collective action.
Direct service works to address the immediate needs of individuals or a community.
Philanthropy donates funds from individuals or institutions to contribute to the public good.
Policy and governance participates in policymaking and public governance.
And social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility uses ethical private sector approaches to create market-oriented responses to social or environmental problems.
Think of the pathways as different colors in the spectrum of service, allowing us to choose from a range of activities to illustrate our own public service masterpiece. The pathways encompass different but interconnected, overlapping, and reinforcing actions.
Pathways are relevant at local, national, and international levels, and are not bound by geography nor topic.
For example, these are just a few ways to advance the issue of access to education. Issues addressed by any pathway can result in measurable community impact towards the common good.
The Pathways tool captures students' interests and predispositions in service. The tool surveys students and provides data that 1. Helps individual students by improving advising. When we have shared language to describe students' interests, it's easier to think about how to support their development.
2. Guides programming. With data about a whole cohort, we can tailor topics to students' interests and expand their experiences.
And 3. Enables longitudinal trend data for students collectively. We can follow attitudes about pathways and relative interest in specific issues over time, which could inspire changes in advising, programming, and policy across institutions.
Members of our international working group have used the tool in creative ways to make a real impact. Get in touch to learn more.
Okay, perfect. And just as an FYI, they mentioned the pathway tools. We refer to it as the pathways survey. So just something to note. And I hope this kind of gives you an idea of how these different pathways of public service and civic engagement work. You know, this is a great way to start developing a community engaged learning course. And I also want to encourage everyone to visit the Pathways tab that we have on our website. And I will be adding our website to the chat later on. But we have more information there. We have the link to the survey. We have a list of examples of service through each pathway. And we have reflection questions to facilitate a classroom discussion. We will also be sharing a Google Drive folder, as I mentioned earlier, and this will have example syllabi and class assignments where the Pathways framework was incorporated. I will now pass it over to Diane. Oh. There we go.
Great. I want to just say a few more things about the pathways. CSUSB was invited to be a part of this. It's a Stanford initiated group, and it's an international group. And they were very interested in the CSU, and I was very pleased to see that they made a special outreach to us. There's a few other CSUs in this effort. Some preliminary things we found and using the pathways, and again, at the end of this presentation, we're not going to go on much longer. We're going to have a chance for discussion, and I hope we can have a discussion about this. We found that our students have the most experience in the direct service pathway, but many of them are very interested now in impact. They no longer really want to just put in hours and sort of check a box, but they really want to have an experience where they can see the impact that whatever they're doing is helping a community issue. And I think as many of us understand that most community issues are multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, to address a lot of issues in the community, it's going to take direct service, but also corporate philanthropy, and also social entrepreneurship, and also community-based research, and also advocacy and policy change. And all of those interweave together to help make change, I think is an important lesson for students to see, especially as future citizens, and as we all have seen on the news channels of how our community has a lot of issues that we are working through, and some of them are pandemic related and some of them are pre-existing the pandemic. And our students want to engage in this process. I think you'll find that they are interested, and I think we do a service to them to show them the many ways that change can happen in a community. And I hope we can have a discussion about that when we get through the next slides, because I think this is an important point. If we're thinking about, back to the slide here, if we're thinking about getting started with CEL, a good place to start is your syllabus. We do have sort of the best practices checklist available. It's Heffernan 2001. It's in the resource guide that I've posted in the chat. Also, to answer some of your questions, yes, the PowerPoint that we're presenting is in that resource guide, so you'll have a chance to look at that. There's examples through Campus Compact, and we're happy to share those with you. And then I think giving it a try, every student that we've had taking the Pathways survey and going through this, for those of us who are familiar with like the self-improvement quizzes, or Cosmopolitan magazine used to have quizzes like, oh, what's your favorite color, or whatever it is. It feels like that. It's a personal, like, what do you like better? Do you like helping people, or do you like, whatever? Students don't find it to be a burden to fill it out. They enjoy it, and it gives you a kind of a nice personalized assessment at the end. So I encourage you to try it. It's free, and I think it's something that may be a benefit for some classes. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit of what Diane was saying, if you do plan to share it with any of your courses, we are more than happy to donate some OCE swag, and then you can host your own opportunity drawing for the students who complete the pathway survey, and then we will mail out some swag to the student. So just as an additional incentive to share the survey. Okay, I will now talk about finding the right community partners. So for community engaged learning and for service learning, finding the right community partner is very essential to the work. So if you are looking for a community partner, here are some tips to consider. The first and probably the most important one will be to start looking for community partners early. Be sure to give yourself enough time to develop the right partnership. Anywhere from 3 to 4 months is more than enough time. And if you hope to begin a community engaged learning or a service learning course for the fall, the best time to start is today. So please be sure that sometimes hiccups happen, and you don't want your project to be delayed. So always start as early as possible. The second tip is to be clear and be flexible about what you're looking for in a community partner. Ask yourself questions like, what do you want students to learn? how can students contribute to the mission of the community partner, and how many students will be participating in the service. So questions like this can help ensure that you and the community partner have a clear understanding of the expectations and the scope of work. And also don't forget to share the Pathways framework with your community partners. Many community partners tend to rely heavily on one pathway, for example, direct service or philanthropy. So sharing the Pathways framework might allow them to consider additional ways for you and your students to help advance their mission and also give students valuable learning opportunities along the way. Lastly, a great starting point is to contact our office, the Office of Community Engagement. We are always happy to provide recommendations, provide support to help you identify and connect with community partners. So I think that, oh, one more slide.
All right, and just to touch on this, I know I mentioned it earlier, to have a service learning experience, it definitely includes reflection. And as a very important part of the process, it links whatever you're teaching in the classroom, your course objectives, to the experience that they're having in the community. It's best if it happens throughout the course and not just in one session or one journal entry. It does need to be structured and guided. And it goes really, what best reflection is moving beyond just, I went there and I saw this, to what does this mean in my life? What does this mean as a citizen, as a future professional, as someone who is studying in this field? What does this experience mean in the context of those lenses? And we found that, again, students are very willing to talk about that or think in that way, but they need to be prompted to do so, to push beyond, I went to the soup kitchen, I fed 6 families, I felt good afterwards, but really getting into the idea of what does this mean? And I'll give you an example. This was several years ago. I was working with a student organization, and they went and did that very thing. They served food in a food kitchen or soup kitchen, and the students afterwards said, oh, this is great. We definitely want to come back and do this next year. And I really challenged them to say, wouldn't it be better to say, I want to work toward a solution so we don't have to have a soup kitchen anymore. We don't need one anymore. You know, what would be a better, instead of just saying, well, let's just perpetuate that we're always going to have this, let's make some sense of how are we voting? How are we advocating for change? How else could we support this agency and the idea of a living wage or whatever it might be? And the students got really energized around that and saw the point I was making, that it wasn't just I had a great experience, but this is just one experience that I have that I hope will prompt me into future action as a citizen and a resident of this community. And we do have examples, many examples of reflection prompts. We're happy to share those with you. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to open it up for discussion. Again, Juan is going to copy and paste this and put it in the chat so we can all look at each other. We can obviously definitely feel like we can talk about other things as well, or any questions you have. And then also reminding you that in the chat, I've pasted the link to the faculty resource guide, which has a lot of great materials that Juan has curated, and then also our website, which also has more and more details. So I'll open up the floor.
This is Cheryl Brandt, and thank you so much for this session. I'm actually out of the Department of Nursing, and I'm especially interested, of course, in the community engaged learning and research. I coordinate the master's program for the department, and our master's program for registered nurses is not a program that for example, prepares the students to be a nurse practitioner, nurse midwife, something like that. So they have very focused and specific clinical experiences. We're really broadly population health. And I think you work with Dr. Teresa Dodd-Butera, who was one of my predecessors. And so you probably know quite a bit, Diane, about the master's program. But we are project-based in a large way, and we are population-focused. And so it feels to me like, on the one hand, we're trying to connect students with, health organizations, but on the other, what are there non-health organizations that a graduate student in nursing could be connected with? Could you speak a little bit about the Office of Community Engagement and the nature of the formal relationships that you have with the organizations that our students often are going to, especially the ones who are doing community engaged learning and research? We've got affiliation contracts, very formal things. And I'm trying to imagine how a graduate student in nursing, a licensed nurse who wants to do project-based practicum that would address population health needs, could be connected through some of the organizations that the community engagement routinely works with. Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. And this actually applies to all disciplines. We do have a large partnership database. Some of the contracts that we have are more recent than others. And especially with COVID, this year has been a weird year. And so everything's a little bit soft right now in terms of who's at the agency and the work that they're continuing to do. But I think that if that is something that we want to pursue, we would be link arms with you and go out into the community, find projects, but also want to talk with the students. Many students would prefer to do something in their home community. And so I would want to also listen to those students to see if there were specific interests or specific agencies that they wanted to work with. And then we could either form contractual relationships or research-based relationships with them. We do also have a variety of funding sources to help support community-based research. And so we want to think through what that looks like as well. One effort that we're going to make, and I'll be completely transparent, we've been out of the community for about a year now, year and a half, ever since we've been virtual. We have not been able to be off campus. And so our plan is the very moment that we can be back into the community, we're going to be doing a pretty intensive community needs assessment to find out what are the current needs now that we're on this sort of hopefully moving away from this pandemic time, and who's still at the agencies, which agencies survived. There are many that have been shuttered because they weren't able to do fundraising like they normally did. And so we're going to try to find out who's still out there, what are you doing, and what do you need? And then planning to come back to the community with here's the want list from the community. What can we do in the short term? What can we do in the long term? And in what ways can we help? So I'd love to work with you on it. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Ari.
Hi. Thank you for all that. And I did learn a lot. I was the first one in here and I thought it was just going to be me, and Diane and Juan were saying, I don't know, you already know everything, but I did learn a lot and I have a lot of questions. So I'm going to try to limit myself to one, and then maybe I'll with multiple parts and then maybe ask another one later. But also I want to clarify that I think that my questions are a reflection of what you were saying, but also kind of like my own identity crisis of community engagement and what that means to me and how that's changed over the years. I feel like I went through one identity crisis like maybe 3 years ago. And I remember talking about this with you, Diane, about kind of recognizing that just going out in the community and just talking to people is important in itself. And so now I feel like I'm in a different place and really thinking about how community engagement and service learning can be more responsive to community needs. And this goes somewhat to what you were saying, Diane, about kind of getting an assessment of what people need. But I feel like the process that we're using is still really faculty focused. Like, here's what the faculty want to do. Let's find a community partner that matches it. rather than starting with the community needs and maybe developing something through which community partners can articulate their needs and maybe do a needs assessment, and that they can make requests specifically of the university that can then be connected with faculty members rather than starting with those faculty members first. So I guess the first part of my question is then, is there something that can be developed or that we can do, or something that I'm missing, where community partners can come to us in a more, I guess, integrated way? And then connected to that, sort of, is a second question of, in looking at the pathways, what I saw missing was capacity building.
Mm.
And I'm wondering how that fits in, and if it doesn't, can we make it fit in?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's been raised too, that just because there's 6 doesn't mean that's it, what what an agency would need. So I definitely hear you on capacity building, and let's think about how we can add that in, because to be honest, I think that is going to be the #1 need of our community partners right now. Is we're overrun by clients at the moment. Everyone needs housing, everyone needs food, everyone needs everything, and we just don't have the capacity to do so, and we won't. And then I think I think that's a long-term need as well. In the Inland Empire, our nonprofits are not well funded. We have a lot of very small nonprofits that do amazing work on a shoestring, and they spend a lot of their time, effort, and frankly, they're really good staff just grinding themselves into a paste because they have to worry about the paycheck for the next month. And if we could build more capacity, they would have more time to do the good work that we know that we need them to do. So both. I think those are both great points. I I hear you about starting with the community need, and I would prefer to do that. My experience, and I'm willing to be wrong and I'm willing to try again, but when we tried that, community partners came up with beautiful lists of things that they wanted that all seemed possible, and there just wasn't, they were disappointed by the university's response. It raised an expectation that we did not meet.
Mhm.
And so we've, by default, almost went the other way and said, well, what is possible for us to offer, and then only offering that to avoid the disappointment. And I would rather do it the other way. And I'm open to trying it again, but I remember the aftermath of, well, I thought you had a blank department, and I don't understand why someone isn't willing to help us. And I didn't have a very good answer. So that's just the truth. And, I try to be honest, and I be honest with the community partners too, even though these are all your needs, and we'll do our best, but none of this is a guarantee, and I'm relying on the good faith of people who are willing to help. And it's, in my mind, it's never a no. It just may be a not right now. But for some partners, it was hard to hear not right now.
Thanks for addressing both of those points, and I'm happy to brainstorm with you on possibly thinking about the community-centered route again.
Okay, I'm open to it. I'm completely open to it. I'd love to do it that way. So yes, and let's do it. Yeah.
So I wanted to add to the discussion on that, is that I was actually the former head of the education department for the Mission and Foundation Museum, which is a nonprofit in Riverside. And I really wanted to get my students involved because I teach museum education and programming, and I wanted to kind of incorporate them into contributing. The one big problem that I saw was that my education programs required some sort of commitment for over a span of a few months. And this was when quarters were still going. So it was difficult because I needed them to build their knowledge and help me to hire projects. And that's really hard to do with students at times. If it's not like a 1 or 2 day thing, it's like a a 10-day thing over the next 2 months or something like that. That could be difficult for the students to really commit to, especially if they're working full-time jobs and they have families and stuff like that. So I can see what you're saying, where they were disappointed because they probably wanted like, hey, we want this commitment, but it's hard to get students sometimes, especially when they have a full-time job and full-time families and, you know, life is going on.
Mhm. Yep.
So maybe like singular projects that are easy for students to sign up for 1 or 2 days and not have to worry about committing for the next 6 weeks and stuff like that. Because as you were talking, I was already kind of thinking, okay, well, how can I get them? Okay, maybe they can lead tours on, you know, they do research on a topic, and then they can lead a tour at the Mission Inn, for example, and they give it to a bunch of third graders, because we have third graders that visit for a 1-day thing, and students can sign up for that. And that's a way for them to engage with the community. You know, the Mission Inn doesn't have to try to track down volunteers to do a tour. We already have a list that's set. The students take the first 3-4 weeks studying, researching, practicing their tour, and then providing it to community, local community elementary schools.
Mhm. Right. And I think that you building in that redundancy of many, many students working on something, then even if one student doesn't participate or there's some reasoning, you know, the job still gets done for the nonprofit, which is the critical bit. Right. Yeah. No, great point. Great point. And I hope I don't sound pessimistic, because I don't want to be. I just care about our community partners very much. I know that they work really hard and have limited resources, and even taking the time to talk with us and think through what the project might be takes their time and effort. And I want to,
Oh yeah.
I want to deliver. Oh, gosh, everything in me wants to deliver on that.
Definitely, as a former like nonprofit, I was head of the education department. It was basically, you know, I had part-time temporary contract positions. And so, you know, I'm working so many hours because that's what I'm getting paid for. And I have a ton of things to do. So I really appreciate it coming from that perspective, for you to say, hey, I want to make sure we come in with a game plan. We're not wasting your time, and, you know, stuff like that. Because we have very little time, and we try to allocate it to projects that are most important. So I really appreciate that. You don't sound pessimistic, you just sound considerate. So thank you.
Okay. I'm glad. And, you know, we've really worked to try to use, even though this isn't faculty based, I'll be very quick about this, that to try to use our university resources to help with just sort of basic needs of nonprofits. We have a lot of excess furniture on our campus, which is perfectly good. We have now set up a process where we're able to share that with nonprofits. We also have a lot of technology that is maybe not the best anymore for our needs, but it's more than adequate for what the nonprofit partner needs. We've set up a system to share our technology, computers, and other things with nonprofits. And then also, many times the budgets for nonprofits for professional development is non-existent. And so since we have all these virtual computer training courses and other courses that are offered, it doesn't cost us anything to add in a few spots for some nonprofit partners. And so we've been able to offer those resources also to our nonprofit partners. And those have been really appreciated. And
Yes.
really doesn't cost us anything. And it,
Definitely, even
Yeah.
just furniture. Like I remember we would have hand-me-downs from like banks who were trying to get rid of their furniture. So and our computers, we would try to have to fight to try to get any updated computers. It was always like scrounging. And so that's really appreciative. I know that I would use Cal State's resources if I had to do a research project for my job, because I can access the library, and even something like that, having access to a university library, databases, journals, and stuff like that, especially in the history area, it's greatly beneficial. So that's really great what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and we've been remodeling our classrooms here on campus, and so there's quite a number of the desks with the arm, or the chair with the desk arm, and there were so many kids who were doing virtual learning that didn't have a desk at home, and so we were able to use some of our nonprofit partners to get those chairs with a little desk to them, and it's good for the earth. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why that is a great partnership for us to pursue, and so I'm also always looking for ways that we can not just in faculty and classroom projects, but just as a university itself, to be a good neighbor. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's really great.
I think we're going to find a lot when we're going to really try to physically go to these nonprofits also and sit down with them and ask them pretty frank questions about, how are things going and what can we do? And I think, to Ari's point, there's going to be a lot of needs for, we need money, we need board directors, we need chairs, we need help, we need research to help us write grants. We need someone to do the newsletter. We just probably need all of that. And so I think we're going to come back with some pretty robust lists, and anything that you all can do to help me encourage your colleagues to take a project. I almost feel like I want to have one of those Christmas trees where you take a project off the tree and you fulfill the wish. I almost feel like setting one of those up in the middle of campus. We're like, okay, everybody, we all got to take a mitten off this tree. Let's go, because it's going to be like that, or it may just be that the nonprofit administrator would just love to have somebody to talk with about, I'm struggling with my personnel issues, or I need advice on how to handle COVID, or, we're doing it too. I feel like we could share our information. So we'll see.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay, this one's logistics, and sorry for the sirens in the background if you hear that. The question was, in terms of these designations for the courses as CSLI or CCEL, I find that when I'm teaching, I go back and forth between doing service learning and not, depending on projects that are available. So what happens in that case? Does that not become eligible for being designated as service learning, or what?
We can be flexible semester to semester. So if you're feeling like you're doing something that's more just in the community, but not necessarily as reciprocal, we can change that designation easily. Yeah, it's very flexible, and it really is just intended to get a better handle on what contributions are we making in the community. And I'm also thinking, and the Chancellor's Office is also thinking this, if our community partners are co-educators, at some point we need to recognize that and maybe even compensate those co-educators. And yeah, but you got to have data in order to be able to make any argument like that. And so this is just the start of making that point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, everything has to start in a certain spot.
Okay, Diane. Well, if anyone else has a question, we can answer it. If not, we can move over to the giveaway. So is there any other
Let's
questions?
do the giveaway.
Okay.
I love a giveaway.
Okay, so for some OCE swag and then a special book, we will be raffling it off. So
I love the wheel. Spin the wheel.
I'm building suspense. I'm not clicking because I'm building suspense.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
There you go.
Woo! Spin wheel spin.
All right. Is Mary still here?
Yes,
All
she's
right,
here.
awesome.
Winner!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I will follow up with an email, and I'll be asking you some details so I can get your prize out.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us and for your thoughtful questions. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope we can work together to help our communities, and please know that Juan and I are here to do whatever we can to help.